About transgender rights. Now, we actually first talked about this 7 years ago, and the good news is that since then, more people do seem comfortable coming out as...
It's been on 7 years? Wow.
...trans and gender non-conforming, which is great. But, as you've undoubtedly noticed, in the past few years, some on the right have truly lost their minds about trans rights, perhaps best encapsulated by their favourite new joke.
My name is J.R. Majewski, and my pronouns are patriot and ass kicker.
My pronouns, conservative, patriot.
All right, so here we're getting into the real truth, which is that everybody involved in the culture wars is a fucking psycho. And you know, I don't know, is John Oliver a psycho? Maybe that's a little far, but this is low-hanging fruit. And yeah, this is totally fair game to make fun of. This shit is... It's like, this is why there's like very few like conservative comedians, because these fucking people can't come up with shit.
I'd like to declare something right now. My pronouns are USA.
That might be one of the cringiest things I've ever heard. My pronouns are, he's like, oh, okay, I gotta think about it. Okay. Oh, instead of he, him, I'm gonna do the letters of the country. Dude, you're a fucking idiot.
How about it, huh?
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
Like all these people, from John Oliver to Ted Cruz, these like personalities getting cheered on for this stuff. Is there just no one else to cheer for? Is that the real issue? Is there nobody? Look at these guys. I mean, I look at John Oliver, I look at Ted Cruz. This is what's on offer. These are my two sides of the culture war. I mean, John Oliver's the funnier but he's like smugger, which kind of like, I don't know, Ted Cruz is pretty smug too. All these people are monsters.
I do not like that man, Ted Cruz. I do not like his shitty views. I do not like him saying ass. I do not like him serving sass. I do not like him in a seat. I do not like him holding meat. I do not like him when he's smooching. I do not like him with Mnuchin. I hate his stupid pronoun bits. That man, Ted Cruz, is full of shit. But look, it is clearly more.
I mean, that bit was just as bad as the pronoun bit. None of these people once you get into the culture wars, you lost it. Once you're playing for a team, compare Stephen Colbert on Colbert Report or Daily Show when he's just having fun. And sure, maybe you could say he's on a team then, but you know, he was like able to find something that felt like beyond just righteous indignation. But what, like, John Oliver has drifted so far. Stephen Colbert has drifted so far. Like, Ted Cruz, what the fuck even is Ted Cruz? Like, anyone playing these team sports, they lose their ability to be funny. They lose their ability to be... They lose part of their humanity, it feels like.
Than just bad jokes. This year alone, over 100 anti-trans bills have been introduced in state houses, and 12 states have signed or enacted them, with all of this happening against a backdrop of violence and threats, including...
Okay, anti-trans, though? What is it? Oh, trans women can't fight women in MMA. Like, basically a guy can't. Someone with a male body, let's leave the interior assessment, because who knows about that. You could say, oh my God, that's anti-trans legislation. That's so vague. That's so vague.
Including attacks and harassment aimed at hospitals providing gender-affirming care to youth. And frustratingly, there are many on the left who seem at best reluctant to engage on this issue and at worst, outright hostile to it, either complaining about pronoun police or arguing that this issue will cost Democrats elections.
If you go to...
Well, yeah, and maybe strategic like that, or maybe they just don't actually... You're just making these sweeping generalizations. Maybe they just don't fucking think that this is heading on the right track. Just because something is billed as progress, you can bill something totally regressive as progress, right? I mean, You could just say, "Oh, the future of let's defund women's sports because it's an inequality." I'll think of something better. There is something there. I'm onto something. You just wait and see.
The middle of the country, people would say, if your conversation during a presidential election is about some guy wearing a dress and whether he, she, or it can go to and go to the locker room with their daughter, that's not a winning formula for most people.
Wow. Michael Bloomberg could fuck all the way off with that shit, but also, while this fun-sized...
Like, why is this British guy who came to this country, which is clearly where he chose to be, and what, you can just fuck all the way off. Now, wait a minute. Mike Bloomberg, I don't have any skin in the game for Mike Bloomberg. Sure, fuck Mike Bloomberg, whatever. But he just basically said that going really deep into the trans thing isn't a winning strategy. Now, of course, he's about to get hammered for his horrible election loss. But this guy was the mayor of New York for an extra fucking term. It's not like he's never had any political success. And he is right. Like, you want to hang your fucking political hat on trans issues? No, I don't think that is a winning strategy. I think anybody who makes that their central point is going to... But go ahead, make fun of him for losing the election.
Billionaire is clearly good at a lot of things, like making money and end of list. Maybe don't take advice on a winning formula for elections from a man who spent over $1 billion.
Yeah, but again, he did win 3 New York mayoral elections. So he's not just good at making money. He actually won a big election 3 times. Again, I don't have any fucking skin in the game for Mike Bloomberg, but just watch how with the culture wars, just like observe how quickly people just turn into psychos. They're not even fucking, there's nothing reasonable about these takes. They're just appealing to your emotion. And that's really what separates the John Olivers from South Park. I mean, South Park just sprays bullets. Just anyone could get caught. John Oliver's so clearly gonna go, oh man, I see this issue, fuck you. And everybody goes, yeah, fuck you. But I mean, Mike Bloomberg is like, he's again, I have no skin in the game for Mike Bloomberg, but just be accurate about what you're even talking about. And is Mike Bloomberg's only skill making money? No, he created a fucking business that is useful. People, pay for Bloomberg terminals. And I've read Bloomberg News. It's like, this is shit the guy created. So it's just so fucking inaccurate, you dumb British fuck.
Of his own money to lose a presidential bid in just 14 weeks. But set aside the notion that it is worth sacrificing protections for a vulnerable group to chase a winning formula. Let's also remember that it's not actually the left talking about trans rights non-stop. It's Republicans who see an advantage in demagoguing this issue. And to ignore them doing that is to allow them to have real calamitous impact on people's lives.
Calamitous impact. There's a whole thing to get into too for like the comedian journalist. I just sent my buddy an Onion headline and he's like, wow, they're reporting real news now, huh? And he is onto something there. There's a whole segment to be done with that, but we're going to continue on with this for now. But God, Oliver is so smug. I feel like his head's getting like fatter with his smugness. That's an ad hominem attack.
10 years ago, Vice profiled a girl named Kai Shapley, and just watch how happy she is talking about her hopes for a future until she remembers something that changes her mood.
Mama says I might grow up to be the president.
So, so what's interesting now is John Oliver didn't even say this is a... Now, look, I know I'm wading into these waters and people feel strongly about this, so I'm inviting in judgment for my belief or how I look at this stuff. All I can do is tell you what I really think. All I can do is tell you how I really feel about this shit. At the end of the day, that's it. Or my beliefs? Am I claiming my beliefs are what everybody should believe, or my reactions are what everybody should have? No, I'm glad there is a diversity of opinions. I'm glad that there's, I do hope that that means that there can be conversation, nuanced conversation that includes things that some people might find offensive. See, this is, it literally was tongue tied. It just tied it in a little knot. But John Oliver didn't even say that this is a trans woman or a trans girl. And I get why. There is something to be like, oh, you're like putting this person as somebody. But like, this is a biological boy that's like, who has grown his or her, whatever, hair long, wants to be called her, but it still is a boy. And like, because kids have such an inherent sweetness, and you go, oh man, I wanna make sure kids feel loved and provided for, and that's such a natural thing. We have to be like really careful here with how this can be used to play your own sympathy or empathy kind of against your logical mind and your rational faculties.
Yeah? What would you change about the world if you were president?
Let trans people be free and go to the bathroom they want to go to.
So we're at this bathroom issue, and there's been a million points. Well, every bathroom at home is a unisex bathroom or something like. Oh, well, I think Bill Burr might have had a joke about that. Yes, that's a great observation. Do I particularly care about the bathroom thing? No, I think that that's your hill to die on. What the fuck? But there's only going to be one side of this presented. There's of course not going to be the parent to say, hey, if this is like a multi-stall bathroom, I don't want let's even say it's a woman with a penis. I'm talking about a child's penis now. This is where the culture wars take you. Deep waters. But let's say that there's a parent that feels that is a reasonable thing. You don't have to even agree that they're right or wrong, or even that it is reasonable, but that it's possible that there is a parent out there who goes, I don't want my biological girl to have like a boy's penis in the same vulnerable bathroom area as them. That's just like a reasonable take. You can say it's transphobic, you can say it's this or that. Even wading into these culture wars feels so stupid, but here we are. This is what's getting discussed, so I'm weighing in. But so we're only going to hear one side of this take, and it's going to watch the way it's set up to pull on your heartstrings. And so this is John Oliver on HBO watching or referencing Vice on HBO. So, I mean, we're like really in this little ecosystem here. And I love so much of what HBO does, but we got to be real about what the fuck is going on here. And I want to really be able to walk you through how I think about something like this and see if maybe it resonates with you, or even if you see things you might be missing, or if you just flat out disagree, think I'm a piece of shit. Of course, you're welcome to that perspective as well. There's some truth there.
Are you able to use the girls' bathroom at school?
No. And now they just put security guards up for the bathroom security or whatever. Oh, I hate that.
That is brutal. It is so dark, it's genuinely hard to watch, which would also coincidentally be a pretty accurate tagline for House of the Dragon. But the point is, given what is at stake here, tonight, let's talk about the latest round of attacks on trans rights, where it's coming from and what it's doing. And before we begin, we're going to be taking the arguments behind a lot of these anti-trans bills seriously because...
And we need to consider that the kids who have made this big an issue in their mind, who are the adult? Kids don't randomly just become these little culture warriors. In fact, kids often, the beauty of a kid is to, like we all have that feeling of like before we really understood what like race was or something like that. That, you know, kids just like make friends. If you see a kid on a playground playing with another kid, or you remember back to you being that age or something like that, and then you just go, oh, I don't see like a different person. Like, this is just my friend. That's the beauty of it. So for a kid at that age to be so into like this big cultural war issue, that's not just like a coincidence. They have been fed this idea that this is some important cause, that this is some, you know, like life threatening. You're like, oh, you can't be happy without this. You need to. And so these kids are being used as fucking pawns in this game. And then we're being told, oh my God, that's hard to watch. That's so disturbing. Well, you fucking helped create that. Would a kid even inherently know what being trans is? No, kids just do stuff. I'm Skeletor one moment, I'm fucking Barry Sanders the next, and now I'll dress up in fucking heels. And kids are just, they're trying everything on. They're trying language on. They're learning to walk. They're just trying. So if a kid feels like this is some big issue that they're really, you know, oh my God, this is affecting my life and everything, that means that there's fucking adults in their life like hammering that message in. You can argue that that is fucking abusive. You know, if anybody sees like Jesus Camp and goes, oh, well, look at the way they're indoctrinating these fucking kids. Oh, they're obsessed with Jesus and Jesus isn't even real and blah, blah, blah. How is this any different? If you think that that's fucked up, this is your Jesus Camp. It's the same shit. The culture wars, it really is like, you're watching psychos kind of mirror each other. These extremists, these fucking radicals. And they've stolen the fucking conversation. There's so many real problems to address. I know you see them, and I know you see these issues and go, wow, this is really, out of all the issues, this is what's getting highlighted here. I'm not saying that they're not important, or they are, but the most important, they're getting this guy's whole HBO show, a second part to discuss. But there's a cultural litmus test going on here, right? There's Overton window games being played. There's, you know, the extremes like these big issues to really fucking get you going.
Of what they're doing, but not sincerely. Because so often they seem to be based more on political calculation than what is actually happening. A pretty good example of this is that in recent years, 18 states have passed laws aimed at protecting youth sports. And South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem even made her state's bill a centerpiece of a campaign ad.
In South Dakota, only girls play girls' sports. What?
So this is John Oliver then being self-aware enough, being meta enough to go, ooh, like the look at this, look at the way this side politicizes this issue. But dude, are we gonna actually see you acknowledging that you're in this same thing, that you leaning into this creates these opportunities too? Everyone's got fucking the political blood on their hands, man. Everyone playing this game on a team has blood on their fucking hands.
Because of Governor Kristi Noem's leadership. Noem has been protecting girls' sports for years and never backed down. Now, Governor Noem has a bill that will give South Dakota the strongest law in the nation protecting female sports. Doing the work, delivering results. Governor Kristi Noem.
Okay, if you time traveled here from the past and the first thing you saw was this ad, you would think two things. One, wow, the campaign centers around youth sports. I guess literally every other problem in America has been solved. And two, she is not pulling off that cowboy hat. And you would be right, but only about the hat part. People like Noem love stoking fear over the specter of trans athletes, girls specifically, having an unfair advantage and taking away scholarship opportunities. But there are vanishingly few examples nationwide of trans athletes attempting to compete at all. And in Noem's state specifically, the head of their high school sports association could name exactly one transgender female athlete who competed and who graduated several years ago. So there are more athletes in this shot from Noem's ad than there are trans girls known to have competed in South Dakota schools. But even if there were more,
this is a totally fair point. But then you would go, well, why is somebody staking a campaign on this? And let's go ahead, call her a psycho. That's totally fine. Anyone involved, the vast majority of people involved in politics put their feet to the fucking fire. You know, they're insane. But they're not, nobody's just pulling this issue out of a hat. The fact that there are people out there going, yeah, let somebody with a male body just play women's sports. That is such a crazy idea to try to sell somebody that that's at all fair. If that was fair, then we would have never split sports into male and female. But of course, nobody ever had an issue with that because the fucking advantages to a male body are just so obvious that has there been any pushback on that? It's not equal to not allow women in the NFL. That would be psycho to let women be taking Ray Lewis hits. I don't care how fucking tough the chick is. That is just nuts. So you've got people that genuinely believe that it's discrimination to not let somebody with a male body play sports with women with male bodies and then potentially get a scholarship or something. The fact that that even happens at all, it's not a numbers game of how often it's happening. Just what kind of logical thought process that represents. And I can get in the shoes of somebody that's well-intentioned that wants to go, no, this person feels like they're a woman, so let them be that in every way. But that's just taking into account one person's experience. That's not taking into account somebody who has a woman's body who's going, you can feel like a woman all you want, but like the way you feel now trumps the biological reality that I fucking live with. And cut your dick off if you want, but you still do have certain advantages. And I just have to, and we do see this all over. And in so many ways, it can be born from like a really good place where you really do want to help. You know, if you saw this in some way, almost like a disability, you'd go like, well, if this person's in a wheelchair, they need access to this building. They can't go upstairs. You need like a ramp to build. That's part of code or something like that. That's a wonderful thing to want to have a space where everybody's included. But in that example, somebody's not like losing out on an opportunity. So sports are competitive. They have winners. They have skill. They have rank. So that's why this example, like the fact that this thinking has crept into this sphere, we're going, wow, the way somebody just feels inside now is having ramifications on like tangible biological reality outside. And this is really why this issue is so polarizing, is because the instances of it might be small, or it might be a small percentage of people, but the implicit thought process, the implicit value structure to go from tangible biological reality to self-reported feelings as a criteria for the society we're basing ourselves on, that is a massive jump. That's a massive jump. And the implications of that are substantial. And it's easy to go, oh, it's just slippery slope or something like that. No, the implications of that are substantial. And once that door is open, and if you want to open it and let's just say, fuck it, go for it. That's what's the most fair, the most right. That's the way people can most realize their identity, their real self, their true self, not the body that they've been shackled with, but how they really feel inside. Truly, people like South Park made that joke about becoming a dolphin or something like that. But that is what is the philosophical underpinnings for like where this ends and begins. Once self-reporting becomes the foundational aspect of the outward reality, what you're called, how you're referred to, or something like that, where does it end? And at what end does outward reality have to alter itself? Of course, this is starting with people's bodies saying, I want to, get my penis turned into a vagina or something like that. Which, of course, none of these things, a penis can't become a vagina. You can approximate it, but these changes are they're just hoping to approximate this feeling. They're trying to get closer to this feeling, but that it can't truly happen, right? And in other cases, like, let's say you have there was a hilarious case of this guy who sued his wife because she had, big tits and great cheekbones and this perfect nose or whatever. And they had kids, and the kids were fucking ugly because the chick was ugly before she had all this plastic surgery. So the plastic surgery wasn't like who she really, on a biological, on a genetic level, was. She wasn't that chick. She turned herself into something. So the guy was fucking this artificial approximation of, she probably felt like, oh, I'm a hot chick, and now I look like a hot chick, and now I can get hot chick shit like this rich Chinese guy. But when those kids come out, they're not going to reflect the fucking alterations, because those alterations were just their costuming. Just like putting on clothes is like costuming. I'm not saying it's not real or it doesn't have an impact, but you got to really fucking think about this shit, man. Come on.
Discriminating against them would still obviously be
We're
wrong.
6 minutes
It
in.
would still be weird that state legislatures were getting involved in decisions that are usually made by organisations governing the sports in question. And it is worth knowing, even at the elite level, conversations around this aren't being handled with flat-out bans. The IOC has announced that it will set rules on a sport-by-sport basis, but working on the general principle that no athlete should be excluded from competition on the assumption of an advantage due to their gender. And
that is crazy. The assumption of an advantage due to their gender. Is that not a fair assumption? If you're going to be on a side that when the vaccine comes out goes, trust the science, I'm calling out everybody here. You've seen this. I'm calling out psycho-conservatives. I'm calling out psycho-progressives. But if you are on a side that has a bumper sticker that says, trust the science, or something like that, and then when it comes to this, you go, well, there's not I've heard people try to make this fucking argument that there's not an unfair advantage due to gender. Honestly, what are the mental gymnastics that you have to make to get there? I fully feel and understand the desire for equality, the desire for people to live their best life, to be who they want to be. That's a good thing. It's a beautiful thing. But how much self-delusion is necessary for you to go, there's not an advantage for guys versus girls in sports? You have to legit throw away the reality you experience day to day to get there. That's nuts.
And it is pretty remarkable that a trans athlete could theoretically compete in the Olympics, but not in South Dakota under-12 soccer, a sport that genuinely only exists to obliterate parents' weekends.
He's right. That is ridiculous. And he goes to a quick other joke, so you can't even think about that, right? He's very strategic. You got to watch this motherfucker. He's strategizing like substantially. He is right that it's ridiculous, though, that you could compete in the Olympics and not in youth soccer. But does that mean that the youth soccer one is wrong? No. The ridiculousness he's speaking of, he doesn't highlight this. He doesn't want you to see this. But the ridiculousness he's speaking of is that the Olympics would make a claim like that. That's what's fucking ridiculous. And he's totally missing that. And he knows that that's the truth, but he's not going to say it. So he just compares the two and goes, can you believe that? This and not that. But he's not giving you the moment to go, wait a minute. Yeah, that is ridiculous, but not for the reason that he's suggesting. it's actually highlighting the ridiculousness of this Olympic body, that they're in their desire for equality, to be progressive. They've made this insane claim that doesn't stand up to reality. It doesn't pass the smell test.
And State's blunt force approach has led to absurd situations like that of Mac Beggs, who, as a Texas high schooler, wanted to wrestle boys, but was forced by state rules to wrestle girls. When he won a state championship, lawmakers tried to pass a law that would have made it impossible for athletes like him to compete, period, which is...
Well, and so that's because you wonder, like, what is so... Okay, we're gonna start with reality here, that boys have an advantage over girls in sports. That's just a general claim that, of course, you can find anecdotal evidence of some girl who's stronger than some boy or can run faster than some boy or something. Of course. My claim is not that every boy is better than every girl at sports. Of course, that's not true. We all know that. But from a general sample size of the population, the reason we have split male and female sports apart is because generally having male chromosomes and male body types and male development is advantageous in like virtually every sport. Speed, strength, coordination, whatever. Throwing a ball, kicking a ball, tackling somebody, you name it. So if there's and we see that the obvious one is when a man transitions into a woman, but still has a male body, the more typically larger shoulders, bone density, strength, whatever, and then goes into a woman's sport. We all go, holy shit, some male MMA fighter knocks out a woman. We're like, Jesus Christ, that's vicious. That's a very easy one to get your head around. If you're all good with that, then you're fucking, essentially, as far as I'm concerned, you're off the deep end. Where it gets a little more tricky is, what about a woman transitioning to being a man who takes growth hormones, takes testosterone or whatever, so is becoming closer to being a man, right? That's what a man would actually get from their development. They're being scientifically altered to approximate that development. So now they are, of course, going to stand out amongst women because they have this hormonal additive advantage, just like Barry Bonds ripping fucking home runs, and us now going, do those really count? Because he was getting juice. That's a fucking advantage. So now, and of course, he's not going to bring this point up, but just from visibly looking at this trans man, you can see the role of hormones altering this person. So, okay, but you're still gonna let a biological woman be wrestled by men. I get people who would go, I don't know, that sits a little, it's maybe that one's more understandable because you're kind of going up in competition. So, all right, if you want to compete, you want to compete. So the Texas solution, which feels discriminatory, it really does, I get it. They go, wait a minute, this person has a hormonal advantage over women, so does that really work there? But also, do we want like a biological woman getting like wrestled by like men, like adolescent boys or men or something? So it is this, you almost need a trans league. And that does sound discriminatory to say that, but it does seem like logical. Now, there aren't the numbers to support that. It's kind of too new a phenomenon for that to really be something taking hold. But you can just go, they won't let somebody compete anywhere. How discriminatory is that? But when you really start to break it down and think about it, that is an understandable option for somebody that there are ways to reach that conclusion that aren't just bigoted and discriminatory. There may be bigoted, discriminatory people reaching that conclusion, but that's not the only way to get there. You can just look at it from a cold, rational perspective, break down reality as it stands in terms of hormonal development and stuff like that, and look at this and go, there is not an easy solution. That's a reasonable thought process.
Obviously absurd because, as one of the wrestlers that Mac actually defeated pointed out, none of these people seem to think through the reality of Mac's situation.
Do you really honestly think someone would change their entire gender just so they would win state? No, that's not how it works.
Right.
And that is a fair point. I mean, maybe somebody could do that, but it's fair to go, this is somebody kind of reporting again, and a lot of this is going to be self-reported, but that's a reasonable kind of rhetorical device to go, do you think this absurd thing? Of course not. But that's just to win states. And you go, oh man, and what's the implication there? State champion wrestling, it's not that big a deal. But let's ask a more cohesive question. Do we think that somebody, a partial reason, let's consider a situation where part of the reason, and this could even be subconscious, but let's just walk through this thought experiment with me. Where part of I think it's universal that we all long to stand out. We all long to be special. We all long to be seen. We all long to be understood. Knowing that that is a foundational aspect of humanity, it's a shared aspect. I believe you feel it just like I feel it. Maybe it shows up in different ways. Maybe you want to be the helper or something. Maybe you want to sell the most cars at your business or something. But there's all kinds of ways this can show up. Is it reasonable? Is it possible? Let's just go with possible that somebody in their quest to be special and understood would feel this maybe urge inside them and not want to just win state champions, but would transition as part of this sense of, this is my journey. And the proof's kind of in the pudding here. Somebody's making an HBO documentary about them. Is that potentially an incentive structure set in to have you on this hero's journey where against these oppressors, you're finding your voice? And I'm not even saying this is good or bad. I'm not passing value judgment. I'm just looking at incentive structures, looking at human nature and going, is it possible that for somebody to feel like they're overcoming oppression and winning a state championship and talking about it and being featured on John Oliver in front of millions of people, that this is all this? Now that is a more cohesive way to look at what's really going on. It's not just about state champions. It's about this arc. It's about this journey. It's about fighting the good fight, being the underdog, being discriminated against and rising up anyway. These are deeply human desires. To think that they may be at play. Are they at play here? Who knows? You could unpack this from Freud could unpack this, Jung could unpack this, Schopenhauer could unpack this. Who knows? Naomi Wolf could unpack this. There's so many directions you could go. The person themselves might even have subconscious forces acting in them that they're not even fully aware of. Is that possible? I certainly think so. Do I know that that's what's happening here? No. But to just pass it off as, is this a state championship or not? Would I transition just to win a state championship? No. That is such a reduced, zoomed in view of something that is not capturing the entirety of this situation. These things go by so fast. It's easy to just, we're not always aware of the way that this stuff influences us, but it's at play. And just watch how the teams pull you over here, over there. If you're just a passive observer and you're not really thinking for yourself, it's so easy to just get pulled. Well. You got to think for your fucking self if you're going to make any sense of this shit. Otherwise, there's too much there. You're just going to go, and you're risking, I don't want to be discriminatory, but on a gut level, it doesn't make sense, but I don't want to be cut out of my social circle or fired, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings even, but also I don't want to deny my own rationality. There's a lot at play here.
This obviously wasn't an effort to cheat. Kids aren't plotting.
Obviously wasn't an effort to cheat. Well, notice that none of what I said there had anything to do with cheating. So again, he's going even further and he's creating this straw man argument and he's going, it's ridiculous to assume that I'm a smart British guy and I know better than you and I'm going to talk confidently on my show. But I never brought up cheating there, but I did reveal a potential incentive structure that's at play that he's not addressing.
Big, deceitful, school sports-related cheating schemes just to get what they want. You're thinking of Laurie Loughlin. That's who you're thinking of here. You're confused.
Again, and this is a great tactic. The quick joke after, go after the stupid LA actress chick who paid to have her daughter in, which does prove that sports are a way to gain access to elite institutions. So there, again, there's more incentive structure. But boom, quick joke after, don't have time to think about the argument he's really making. Ha 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 ha. It's very strategic. You got to hand it to him. It's smart. And the pace of it really keeps you moving.
So much of the conversation around anti-trans laws involves massively overheated rhetoric that does not match the reality of kids.
Overheated rhetoric. These kids wouldn't do this to just cheat. That's overheated rhetoric. That's not a nuanced understanding of the societal incentives to be different, to be special, to be an underdog, to be fighting for equality, all ostensibly good things. And the road to hell can be paved with good intentions. I'm not saying this is hell, but there are good reasons why somebody might be doing this stuff. It's not just this. So you're talking about this inflamed rhetoric, and then you're doing the same thing, but on the side that you and your audience agree with, so you all get a pass. Come on.
Actual situations. And interestingly, a lot of it's been fueled by some of the same players behind the critical race theory panic, who, as we discussed in February, were using it as a wedge issue to promote school choice. In fact, one key architect of the CRT panic, Christopher Rufo, recently pivoted to attacking trans rights, and he has openly discussed the strategy behind doing that.
What I'm looking at, and it's just kind of an ongoing series, I just started it, is to take that same system of reporting, that same style of reporting as I did with critical race theory, but now taking a look at gender ideology. What's happening right now is parents are feeling that. They're feeling oof, this is kind of weird, I'm kind of uncomfortable with this, but I'm scared to speak out. And so what we have to do is we have to give them the kind of media, narrative, kind of justification or validation or substantiation of their concerns to say, hey, this is the kind of thing they're teaching in schools. And then we have to give them the language where they can speak about it with confidence, they can speak about it directly, and they can speak about it with the requisite level of aggressiveness that it's going to take to say, hey, wait a minute, we have to stop this.
Yeah, he's basically giving people...
So he's literally just John Olivering his side. He's literally just... And in fact, his tactic is he's just being really sincere about what his strategy is. Now, whether you think it's better or worse than I'm just a comedian pointing out these horrible people, that's John Oliver's strategy. Which is better? I don't know. John Oliver seems actually in a way less honest because John Oliver's doing the same thing. He's giving people that same ammunition to go, wait a minute, are you saying that somebody would transition just to win a state championship? That's crazy. Kids would go through that whole complex process just to cheat. He's given you those 2 points in this episode. And neither of those points were ones that I needed to lean on to understand the complex motivation structure, incentive structure at play here. That feels like the way a real person, I'm trying to get to what the truth is. I don't have a fucking team where I'm going, well, I hope people get discriminated. I don't want that. I don't want people to be discriminated. I don't want women to lose out on opportunities for women's sports. I don't want somebody who feels like they have, the wrong body to lose out on their chance to have their own life in their own way. But we live in a society. We're trying to understand these things are about interactions together. Competitions are between people. Scholarships are, these things are all existing at once. You can just focus on one side of that and not realize that that has an impact on other things. It's like all interwoven. So for John Oliver, I was going to say Jon Stewart, for John Oliver to hold this guy to task for being like, how dare you give your team a blueprint for how to express the way they feel about it? Now, again, these people can be, I think it would be insane if you're waking up every day and your main cause is to you're just fighting this culture war day in and day out. That feels totally nuts to me, whatever side you're fucking on. Unless it really is directly impacting you or an immediate loved one in a substantial way. Everybody else getting in this game is, whatever. But for Oliver to hold him to task for the exact thing that he's doing, I mean, you couldn't have a more classic case of pot calling the kettle black here.
A script to repeat. And say what you want about Chris Rufo, like, for instance, that he's a fear-mongering troll who looks like what would happen if someone made the recipe for Ryan Gosling but forgot to add the hotness. He is very deliberate.
And it's just literally, it's like, say whatever you want about the guy, like insulting his looks. Now, this is great because I did insult John Oliver's looks before. So it's like, if you feel a certain way about somebody, of course your instinct is going to be to just hammer them. Like, has anyone ever hammer fucking Mother Teresa for her looks? No, because your feeling is probably of warmth to them. If you hated Mother Teresa and thought she was abusive and exploitative, you'd be like, look at this bony old bag just trying to, right? Like your hate of this person that you've othered would come out, and which is, of course, what I did to John Oliver.
In how he tries to influence public opinion. Rufo suggested branding the discussion of trans issues under the umbrella of radical gender theory. And he tweeted out that conservatives should start using the phrase trans stripper in lieu of drag queen. It has a more lurid set of connotations and shifts the debate to sexualization.
And this is just like saying, or let's focus on trans children, on some little 6-year-old who's like, I don't get to use the bath. Everybody's playing this. It's Israel-Palestine. You're just locked in this fucking war. Right? Like the strategizing takes two. It takes two to do this. To shift the debate implies that there is a debate, and there is a debate. And there are people attempting to legislate this way and then legislating back that way. Nobody wants to concede any ground. Nobody wants to fucking... And because these words are being what a woman used to mean, biological woman. Now, if it just means how you feel, that's an attempt to shift language on a fundamental level. And if you're to say, no. Oh, look, I have long hair. I have what looks like a vagina. Look, I'm presenting as a woman, so just use the word woman for me. But if you open up the hood and look under there, we're shifting what that really is. Again, I'm not passing value judgment on that. If we want to do it, let's do it. But let's also be real about what it is we're fucking talking about. So if you're looking at this conservative guy going, oh my God, how dare you try to shift the debate, blah, blah, blah. But if you're attempting to go, well, nobody would do this just to cheat. And then you're going, oh my God, look at how sad this little 6-year-old is that they can't do it. You're using your strategy too. Be honest about these strategies. In fact, the conservative guy here is being way more transparent about what kind of war he's fighting, about his extremism, than you are about you, which you just pass off with a joke every couple seconds.
And sure, anything can have a more lurid and sexual set of connotations if you just rename it. I'll show you. Rain, sky jizz. There, much worse. Immersion blender, soup vibrator, spaghetti sauce, noodle loop.
I mean, if this was funnier, I'd give it a laugh. John Oliver, faggy hoster.
See, this works on anything. But in the conservative playbook, that tactic is a really big one, linking discussion of gender identity to sexual predation and teachers grooming students. A related tactic is arguing that the rise in kids identifying as trans is due to social contagion, that it's just a mass delusion, a trendy fad that is rapidly spreading among young people. Just listen to Abigail Schreier, a vocal proponent of that theory, laying all of this out.
If you want to see brainwash, check out these young teenagers who suddenly decide they're transgender. They immediately cut off their families. They very often drop out of school. They are very often start tattooing themselves and using drugs. And they are creating a world for themselves that is so healthy, so built around sexuality, and they lose all their hobbies. Their only hobby is being transgender.
Okay, so this is going to be an easy one to take a swipe at because this is just like a fucking anecdotal. This is like these kids are losing their mind. This is a classic thing. We see this all the time. And this is why I really want to walk the walk of being like, I'm not on a fucking team, because to watch this lady sitting down with Candace Owens and spew this kind of anecdotal stuff. Now, is there a chance that probably a high likelihood that what she's describing is something that happens? I'm sure it has at least happened once. It might have happened tens of times, hundreds of times. Who fucking knows? I don't know. It'd be hard to do that kind of research. And what she's talking about, like they lose all their hobbies. I mean, this is just like, it's so vague. You're just saying like, oh, like this is a possibility of what does happen. Again, there's no nuance there. That's just stoking that fire too of like, they start using drugs and blah, blah, blah. You could literally, this is what parents said about like rock and roll music. Kids are listening to Led Zeppelin and their hair is long and now they don't want to be an accountant anymore and it's all fucked. Like get these British rock and rollers out. You know, like that kind of thing is like where's the fucking nuance there? And once you're on a side, are you even willing to be nuanced about your shit? You're sitting there in your little Candace Owens world and you're just going, this is fucking ridiculous and it's fucked. And you lose somebody like me because I go, there may be points there. I think that there is likely, like once, again, if we're going back to incentive structures, once you're in a society that has kind of victimhood and oppression as something where people want to adjust for that and highlight you and make sure that you're given fair treatment. Once that incentive structure is set, there are likely people, and maybe there are people with mental issues or identity issues that are gender dysphoria, and maybe there are people that the gender dysphoria isn't their real issue, but they see an avenue into feeling seen, feeling like they have a cause, feeling like they have a community, feeling understood. This is classic for... Now, I could go, yeah, me and my cousin got into ska when we were kids. And like that was our way, and we dressed in a certain way. And now I look back on it and I'm like, Jesus Christ. Now you're going to go, oh my God, you're comparing being trans to ska or something like that. But for every trans person that is truly trans or whatever, who even knows what that means, there are self-reported people who go, I actually did, I'm glad I didn't take further action, or I took further action to have surgical alteration and I regret it. This is real. This is taking in the full scope and the nuance of this issue. But if you're on a team, are you going to want to let those other examples in? No. So you just go, look at this boogeyman situation. They're cutting off their families or doing drugs, panic, fear, blah, blah. Sure, maybe it does happen. I bet it does. But to what extent or something? This is just like echo chamber, echo chamber. I'm speaking for the vast majority of people who feel that nuance is the case. I really do believe that is a majority that want nuance. Whether you think my nuance is right, I am at least attempting in good faith to call out absurdity on both teams when I see it and attempt to reach some kind of a truthful understanding here about what's really going on, about all the potentialities, about all the implications, about the underlying philosophies here.
So there is a lot there, but let me just address the claim that trans kids lose all their hobbies, because I will point out that when they try to have some, like, I don't know, school sports, for example, a bunch of arsehole adults try to keep them from doing it. Shry sometimes dresses her argument up by using the term rapid onset gender dysphoria, which is total horseshit. It comes from a study published by a researcher in 2018, hypothesizing that some kids identify as trans due to peer pressure. But it's worth you knowing that study was based on a survey of parents, not actual trans kids, and it targeted parents from organizations dedicated.
And all these studies and stuff like that. I mean, am I the only one who fucking sees that any study can be... Look, these studies are getting also worked by these teams. Who's we're going to be like, let's give $100,000 to prove that trans kids aren't legit or something like that. That somebody with skin in that fucking skin in the game is maybe not the ideal expression here. So what are you going to do? But again, we're talking about studies that can be made to say anything in both directions. When I even hear a study says, I don't want to throw out the whole scientific process, but am I supposed to believe that these studies are the same level as the turtle population in the Galapagos is altered? I'm assuming that Galapagos turtle study, unless it's being funded by BP or something like, see, oil's not fucking. I'm assuming that is going to be, like, there's going to be more scientific method to that than just like, oh, how many trans kids are wrong in hindsight or something.
To opposing trans ideology, which is instantly disqualifying. It's like citing a study claiming that all postal workers are terrifying hell demons sent to attack your family, but then learning that the researchers only surveyed a collection of anxious dogs. That's some heavy sampling bias that clearly skewed your results. And to be very clear, there is ample evidence of gender variance throughout human history, and as far back as historians have found evidence of trans people, they found trans children. As for the rapid rise...
Well, yeah. If there's transgender people, kids just model their behavior on what they see. It's monkey see, monkey do. Kids are... If you see a kid, they're just literally sitting there fucking absorbing everything. So anytime that there's something, a kid's gonna fucking take that and run with it. So he made a good point about the bias of the study, which is a point that I, basically just made too. And then goes on to be like, see, so anytime there's this, but like, what if there's only 5 societies where there are trans people, and then we see trans, that actually, and the fact that there are transgender kids showing up wherever there are transgender adults, that just is reinforcing my point that once kids see this stuff and they see these expressions or whatever like that, then they go, oh, okay, there's something here. And like certain people gravitate towards that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. This is just observable reality.
In kids identifying as trans, as the writer Julia Serrano has pointed out, when you look at a chart of left-handedness among Americans over the 20th century, you see a massive spike when we stopped forcing kids to write with their right hand, and then a plateau. That doesn't mean everyone became left-handed or that there was a rapid onset southpaw dysphoria. It means people were free to be who they fucking were.
That's actually a good point. I think that's a really good example. That the idea that certain people might be a certain way in society only when there is a kind of lane to be there. That feels right to me. And I think we have to look at the ways in which society does force people into certain lanes based on what's acceptable. That's a good, sound point, and that's a solid example of a case where we're not going to know how many people are left-handed if you have to write with your right hand.
The extent that some young people are just exploring their gender identity, how exactly is that a bad thing? Who the fuck are they hurting? Watching the conversation around this, it is...
Well, who the fuck are they hurting? That's a great kind of appeal to emotion. Let kids be. But again, we're now leaving out the example of the sports thing. Now, again, this stuff gets so annoying because you go, oh, who cares about the sports? It's so few people. But if you're beating someone in a competition and now the range of competitors has shifted and now that person's losing, there's a level of hurt. Hurting is maybe too strong a word there, but that's great. He's not saying who are they affecting. He's saying who are they hurting? And that word hurting is like, implies, well, why do you even care? Now, we're not going to get into kind of non-reversible castration procedures and stuff like that because fuck it. I mean, this has gone on right now for an hour. So even though we're only 12 minutes in, you can see how much there is there. Now, maybe you don't care for this kind of analysis. Maybe you don't. Maybe you think I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. I just wanted to go through, we're only 12 minutes through. And if you just burn through that 12 minutes, you're getting this, and you're already maybe predisposed to be on this team or this side, or maybe you're unsure and leaning this way. He just hit you with dumb conservative, like make a joke. Little kid, sweet little kid, who are they hurting? Right? So he's, and look, he's a personality. He's making a case. I'm doing the same thing, but I don't have a fucking team here. I'm not attempting to convince you to join either team. My attempt here is, and I'm being totally transparent about this, is to say the further you drift towards the extremes, the more of an agenda and a side you have, the more you tend towards hypocrisy, towards being the pot calling the kettle black, towards using arguments about your opposition that you're unwilling to look at yourself, and to trying to pull fast ones on your audience that if you're not, and then make a quick joke after, you got to be really aware of this. This is going on around you all the time, in conversations, at dinner parties, in advertisements, in fucking talk shows. Doesn't matter what team you're on, what side you're on. Just watch the way people are trying to persuade you. Watch the way they're trying to get into your own thought process and either convince you you're wrong or double down on logical fallacies you're already embracing. This is super high level stuff, super tricky. But if you take the time and really think about it yourself and trust your own thought process, trust logic, trust reason, trust your own emotions, then I believe you can get to a deeper level of truth and see the game for what it is. Thanks for joining me. It's been a pleasure.